What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and this is rFactor 2 with the Howston G4 and G6. I can't remember which I'm driving. I'm driving the hardtop version. The other one is the other version that you see on screen, the green car. But you guys can probably figure that out, so that's really quite pointless to say. But we're going to be doing a 30-minute race here at historic Brianza, aka Monza, and we will be using the oval portion of Monza because it's just right, you know. Who says Europeans don't like oval racing? For you guys out there who don't know, this car replicates the Lola T70, which is a historic sports car racing car. And that guy just stopped right in front of me. However, as I understand it, and what seems to be a fairly interesting story, or could be, potentially, is they actually had the licensing arranged with Lola to actually call this car the Lola T70, and instead, Lola had their issues, and, well, now we have a Howston, once again. Pretty interesting. And I have driven this car in rFactor 1 in the Classic Sports Car and GT World Sports Car 1970 mod. And I'll put that down in the description so you guys can link or watch that. I'll link it down in the description so you guys can watch that to see just a little bit of comparison of two similar cars in both rFactor 2 and rFactor 1. And the rFactor 1 version is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, superb. That is a well done car. That mod, Classic Sports Car, GT, World Sports Car 1970, terrible graphics. It's a F1 Challenge conversion, but those physics are definitely top notch for sure. Honestly, this feels very similar. Definitely very similar. The thing you really have to get used to, and the most difficult thing, is training your brain to use the brakes, aka brake early, brake often. Let's stick it way up the inside here. And I can't see where my opponent is because of the banking. But I really do like this car, and I'd go ahead and say that in my short time with this car, because obviously this was released earlier today, that this is actually the first car with rFactor 2 from ISI that I really feel like I'm kind of clicking with it. Like it's starting to actually feel like it should. The car is behaving like I would expect, and my driving is, of course, terrible. It happens. It can't all be winners, but it actually feels like it should rather than what you typically feel in rFactor, or what I typically feel in rFactor, which is where the tires are basically rubber marbles and nothing more. These actually feel like 1960s era tires. Which I will go ahead and say, in ISI's defense, the historic Formula 1 cars really aren't that bad either. They're just not my cup of tea. Played too much Grand Prix Legends to want to drive those cars yet again. Using a naturally progressing track, which means it should rubber up a little bit. But unlike other cars, I don't feel like there's a complete and utter lack of grip when you're off the racing line, because I'm not sure if this is how it is, but this is how it has always felt. The real track technology, the real road, whatever you want to call it, outstanding piece of work, and definitely one that I welcome as a guy who likes, you know, sports car racing, which, you know, track's obviously going to change over time. I really like that dynamic, but we know, and this is fact, that a quote-unquote green track in rFactor 2 real road technology speak is more of a dirty green track. You always think about something like, you know, for example, Albert Park when Formula 1 shows up. The track hasn't been used for who knows how long. It's basically a regular everyday street, you know, more or less. And that's green, which isn't necessarily what I think a lot of us would consider green, but that's what it is. And then it feels like once you go off the rubbered in racing line, suddenly you have that level of grip, which means, or at least that's what I feel, because that part, I'm not sure if that's fact, but that's how I feel at least. And then suddenly, you know, you just have nowhere near as much grip as you thought you should, because, well, you're only slightly off the racing line, but because that part of the track hasn't been used at all, quote-unquote, according to the engine, suddenly you have a complete and utter lack of grip, and then you have the deduction of grip for marbles and rubber buildup, clag, whatever you want to call it. But this car is actually fairly well behaved for the type of car it is. I'm driving the 1969 version with the wide tires in terms of the hardtop. I can't remember if it's the G4 or G6. I believe it's the G4. It's the one with the roof on it. You guys will know. You'll figure it out, right? Does definitely feel kind of wallowy under braking, but that is definitely a trait that this car is going to have. I saw a guy just in my mirrors, but now I can't find him. Now, in terms of the graphics model, is what it is. This car was a car that was done a very long time ago, and then it was updated, so to speak, to their more modern standards, but you can definitely tell it wasn't one of their more recently done graphical cars, for sure. Not that it's terrible. It's definitely an improvement over their earliest rFactor 2 content, but it's definitely not the best. I'm looking at you, tachometer. It just cuts me off, man. But no, it's not just the tachometer, it's the whole package. It really just doesn't quite stand up as well as, you know, for example, the Marussia, which really does look absolutely fantastic. I would definitely like to see the glass updated on these two cars. It is also worth noting there's a known quote-unquote bug or something that's going to be changed. Isn't necessarily how it's going to actually be going forward eventually, and that's you can basically shift, and you know, if you don't lift the clutch or if you don't dip the clutch or anything like that, it'll actually go ahead and shift, sort of, but then you just basically got to release the throttle and all that sort of thing, which isn't necessarily right. It pretty much goes into gear every single time you lift off the throttle, instantly, guaranteed, 100%, which, you know, it's not exactly correct, and they're actually going to be fixing that in the future, so look for that. But that's really not something that I expect to affect how the car drives and how it behaves and how it handles too much, because after all, we are still using, you know, proper 3-pedal footwork. It's just too much fun to heel and toe. And yes, I apologize for lack of pedal cam, but yeah, I'll just leave that one there. So I know some of you guys like that, but sometimes I just don't want to see my feet in my videos. You know what I mean? Yeah! Here's a little pro tip. Never look to the right when you're in a right-hand banked turn. That was pretty crazy right there. More careful into that corner there. Just not really happy with my line through there. And you get earlier into the throttle there in that second corner. One thing I will say though about rFactor is, and this very well could be why I've yet to really have a moment. Keep it on the track, keep it going, keep it going. And this is probably why I really haven't had a moment where rFactor 2 has really clicked until this car, is the force feedback. It's really good, it's really detailed. What I see on screen is what I'm feeling. You know, the way you would expect it to be, but at the same time, when I'm at low speed, and this is most noticeable in, you know, the higher downforce cars, such as the modern Formula 1 cars, they just are absolutely terrible for this, is the downforce cars, we got a yellow flag here, the banking, that's not good, it's not good, probably somewhere else on the, probably around the crossover, but the force feedback at low speed or relatively low input, it just feels so very light and very drifty. Now obviously a car like this isn't going to have the most grip, especially at speed. I mean, I'm not sure of the downforce figures, but I'd imagine it's fairly, you know, neutral in terms of lift to downforce. But you know, it just feels like there's so much play in the wheel. Like I'm doing this and there's no force feedback at all. Like I can just wobble all day, every day. And it just feels very weird. And obviously in a downforce car, the higher speed you have, the faster you go, the more downforce you have on the car, more or less, the more, you know, weight the wheel is going to have. We're just starting to lock up the rear tires now. Brakes are nice and warm. So it's kind of like I always feel like the force feedback has to be tuned more or less to a certain speed corner, and there's really nothing you can do about it, it seems. So I'm one of those guys where I really don't like force feedback clipping, especially when I can prevent it, and especially when there's tools to help you prevent it as easily as that meter in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. That it just annoys me, and it's just kind of something, I guess, more seat time with rFactor 2, just learn to live with it more or less. A car like this is not necessarily all that bad, largely because, again, it's not a downforce car. You're not going through corners really all that fast anyways. Like, for example, right here, if I went ahead and made it so my force feedback wasn't clipping on the banking, which really isn't needed because you know what the car's going to be doing anyways. Although it's still nice to feel those bumps. Then, I mean, I would have absolutely no feedback at all when I'm doing anything else, which it's like really, I think rFactor 2, the biggest thing that it needs is a force feedback boost at low speed. You know, again, it might not be the most realistic thing exactly to the real world, but with the hardware that you have, you know, the only thing I feel the game with is my eyeballs and my steering wheel. So coming up on about halfway through this race. not sure what position we're in at all. To see like through that corner right there, feels good. Feels good, man. Through there, it's basically like steering with a piece of toilet paper. It's that strong. Which, I mean, some people will think I'm complaining about it or whatever, but you know, yes, that's how it's, you know, gonna be, especially in a downforce car, where, you know, usually those cars in particular are a lot lighter in general, so you're gonna definitely feel a lot more. But it's also still a sim that you're playing, probably at your desk or in your fancy schmancy cockpit system, but you probably don't have a $4,000 wheel. Hey, would not mind a Bodnar wheel. We'll go ahead and say that the sounds aren't spectacular, but they work. Could be a little bit better, but you know, again, they get the job done. They're not terrible. Oh, hey, look at it. Okay. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's illegal for me to actually cross that line. Those are slower class cars there. That's why they're 3/4 of a lap behind or so. And I almost forgot there was a corner there. Move the brakes a little bit forward. And then we're going to proceed to lock them up. I do have to say, though, I almost forgot this track was actually in rFactor 2. You see a lot of stuff from the 1960s version of Monaco, as well as the 1960s version of Spa, but it's almost like this track doesn't even exist. See, that's what I was talking about earlier right there. I just totally got it completely all wrong, but just lifting and it magically works. As well as the fact that you can shift it without the clutch at all, which seems very, not necessarily wrong, don't get me wrong, it's not wrong, but as far as I know, there's no downside penalty to that right now, which obviously if you shift without the clutch, it will work. If you do it right, there basically will be no damage done, but if you do it wrong, well, goodbye gearbox. Which hopefully with the driveline update that they have planned, that they've already sort of announced, that will be something that we'll see. Something similar to the grinding tranny mod for rFactor, and for some reason I can never say that, ever. 10 minutes remaining time. Still don't know what position we're in, nor do I care enough to flip the page on the display. And for anyone listening who happens to be able to mod the user interface there, what I would do to have white text rather than that ugly yellow stuff. What I would do. I'd be a very happy man. So if any of you guys out there happen to know a link or want an idea for something to mod, for whatever reason, there you go. That little display box, man. That yellow text pisses me off to no end. I do have to say, though, I was very mixed about hearing that this car was going to be released. Well, not necessarily hearing about it, because, I mean, obviously that's a good thing, and it's a car that I expected to somewhat like a little bit, but on the same time, same hand, I haven't really been a fan of rFactor 2 because, like I mentioned, I haven't really ever clicked with it for a variety of reasons, I feel, but I really wasn't expecting this car to be any different or be an improvement, but to me, to my hands, it does feel like an improvement. It does actually feel like what I would expect. It feels like an automobile rather than something from planet who knows where. Yeah, it just kind of always weirds me out. The rFactor 2 community, I mean, it's got a very advanced physics engine. It's definitely very capable, although I would easily and non-hesitantly say that ISI have not necessarily done it any favors, although this car is definitely an improvement and definitely looks to be, you know, become one of my favorite cars here in rFactor 2. You know, but like I said, you can tell it's very advanced and you can tell it's definitely got the capabilities, but I don't think it's there yet. I still don't think it's there yet with this car. I think it still has ways to go, but they're still working on it, of course. But, you know, like, the community is so much zealotry, and it's, you know, not just limited to rFactor 2 by any means. Don't get that impression. But it just really annoys me. Like, I did a video with the Skip Barber car in rFactor 2 and iRacing once they updated the Skip Barber car there over in iRacing. And honestly, the rFactor 2 car just drove insanely backwards, and then I was told I don't know how to drive it, and then some guy basically posted a video where he's mashing the throttle at the apex and then just releasing it like every single corner, which is one of those things that you would never do and never expect to actually work in that manner. But sure enough, that's driving correctly. And it just, and I'm not just talking about just a little bit of throttle to stabilize it, no maintenance throttle. We're talking full on mash the gas. But it's one of those things, just like with, you know, for example, iRacing, where you see on YouTube, you know, so many people just blindly hail it as, oh, it's the greatest of all time. All hail. You know, stuff like that, which, I don't know, I never really got into that. And that actually is kind of a downside, I'm not going to lie. And yes, I would definitely love it if the iRacing crowd who blindly follow would go ahead and stop blindly following. And I say that as a guy who likes iRacing. Seriously. 5 minutes left. Now, if only we had a Porsche 917. Then I'd be excited. Although, if I remember correctly, we got a couple of different cars coming up for rFactor 2 in the pipeline that should be fairly interesting in their own rights. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, well, actually I won't play that game because I really am not too terribly sure and I don't want to say anything, but there's a BTCC car, touring car, for you guys out there who like those type of things. Oh yeah, I can't wait for me to do a video of that. How about that? But there's one of those, as well as what I'm really excited for, and really looking forward to. Yes, I just said really for an entire straight on the Monza Oval. The IndyCar content, which rFactor 2, ISI, you screw that up, you're gonna need to earn my money in the future if you screw that up. I'll just say that. I'll just put that out there. I mean, that is definitely my most anticipated content for rFactor 2 by a mile. I still feel like there's just too much play in the wheel, though. I really think that's the #1 thing that makes, you know, rFactor really kind of weird for me. As a guy who, excuse me, as a guy who plays rFactor 2 a good bit, but it isn't my main sim, and it probably won't be my main sim, you know, ever. No matter how good it is, no matter how much it improves, because, quite frankly, you know, the online structure that iRacing has works 10 times better for me than what rFactor 2 has or doesn't have. But, you know, just that kind of wobbliness on center just definitely doesn't really seem to help me all that much. Should have probably about 1 lap left here once we get back around to the main straight. Obviously the oval is at the end of the lap, as you guys saw at the very beginning of the video. I'm pretty sure there's a guy behind me, but he's directly behind me doing his slipstreaming. Yeah, there he was. It never stops being weird passing cars that are on a different racetrack, even though they're on the same racetrack. Oh yeah, I drove it in much deeper that time. Should have tried that a long time ago, to be honest. It would be interesting to see someone build a track like the historic Monza here today. Build a track within a track, and I'm not talking about a roll ball, I'm talking about 2 distinctly different sections. Although I guess, if I'm not mistaken, Lausitz's ring has a setup like that available configuration. No! Turn! No! No. 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 Okay. That was not good. Did not need that. Did not need that either. Oh god. Oh god. Oh boy, I can't finish one of these races, I swear. Just liking in Mojo recently. Seems like every video recently has ended up with me crashing. Should probably not do that. But let's see if we get one more lap. Running out of fuel. Or so they say. And there's the checkers. Which, speaking of fuel... Oh, there it is. Bottom right-hand corner of the screen, hidden behind the display. Just like, hey, this car has no fuel display. But you just got to look for it. So that's that. That is the Howston in rFactor 2, and I just killed that guy. Sorry? Sorry, sir. I will totally not pay for your funeral because, well, you're pixels. You are pixels! So, hope you guys enjoyed that. Pretty good car. Definitely worth downloading if you own rFactor 2, which, if you do, you probably have already downloaded it because you'd be silly not to. And I finished 4th. I threw away the podium at the end of the race. That stings a little bit. But we were the fastest Mark IIIB 1969 version on the track. That's always a big plus. So I guess the G6 is a little bit faster, and we were driving the G4, which is the hardtop. So I answered my own question in my own video. That's that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Download the car. Enjoy it. Bye.